Hello, welcome to my review of a movie and a show with Bear in the title. Before we talk about Cocaine Bear, let's talk about The Bear, which is a series on FX. Jeremy Allen White from Shameless plays the main character, Carmy, who takes up the ownership of his family restaurant after his brother passes away. The show has a really great cast of characters, all of which are really interesting and all of which are really well portrayed by the actors. I really enjoyed the character of Richie. I thought he was very funny.
Marcus!
What?
Where the chili flakes? It's the most Polish shit ever. Cousin organizes, it's more confusing.
Right there. Labeled chili flakes.
The character of Sydney is a standout character. She kind of ties the whole show together. It rides this perfect balance of having this really great energy, having really great pacing, and also focusing on the characters and making them really interesting. The show has a really great, intense atmosphere. It also feels authentic. A lot of the food they were cooking looked delicious, and it seemed like they were really cooking food. There's so many times in films and TV where you see food or people cooking and it doesn't look real or the food doesn't look good. And this show felt pretty authentic in terms of showing how a kitchen works. It also had a clear sense of place. The setting was very well established and detailed, both the city of Chicago and the restaurant itself. It does its own thing, it's unique, I didn't know where it was going, it has its own interesting structure and characters and moments. Although some of the characters felt underused and there are some things I wanted to be fleshed out more, there will be a season 2, and I'm sure in season 2 they'll flesh out those elements. The music for the show was really great, adding to that suspense and intensity. I think my favorite episode is the second to last episode. I think a lot of people would agree with that. It was a very smart show. I was looking forward to watching it. I'm glad I finally got to check it out. I thought it was great. I thought it was super entertaining and funny and intense, and yeah, it's got a lot of great moments in there. If I had to give it a rating, I would give The Bear 4 stars for season 1. Now that we've talked about The Bear, let's talk about Cocaine Bear. So, Cocaine Bear. First of all, what a title, right? That has to be the greatest movie title of all time. I mean, Cocaine Bear. This movie might have a cult following of sorts, you know. I just wish I liked the movie more because while it could have been a really good, bad movie or one of those so bad it's funny movies, ultimately I just kind of felt the film was kind of boring. I wish it was crazier. I wish it did crazier things because it did have its moments. Obviously, the movie is banking on the absurdity of the premise. This movie is based on a true story about a bear that consumed several kilos of cocaine. But in this movie, of course, the bear kills like 15 people and it's like jumping around. It's doing all kinds of crazy things. It doesn't even act like a real bear. It acts like a cartoon character, basically. I mean, if you really want to know how authentic this movie is, it starts with a freaking Wikipedia article. The CGI on the bear was laughable. It reminded me of that live action Yogi Bear movie that came out like a decade ago. It looked like that. It was hilarious. Aside from that, it's pretty straightforward and basic. The supposedly wacky parts aren't very funny. The only actor I thought gave a really great performance in this was Isaiah Whitlock Jr. I thought his character was great and I enjoyed the scenes with him. I really enjoyed following that character, but every other character in this, I just thought they were annoying. Cocaine Bear has bad pacing, especially at the start of the film, you know? So many scenes at the beginning of just dialogue. I wish this film was much shorter than it was because it felt way too long. To me, it just seemed like this premise was way too thin to make an entire movie out of because it feels really stretched out at points. One thing that's going on are these teenagers are in the woods and they're like causing mayhem and they steal some of the cocaine. So O'Shea Jackson Jr. and Alden Han Solo are going to find the cocaine and they just happen to meet O'Shea Jackson Jr. in the bathroom and they fight and O'Shea Jackson Jr. knocks them all out, drags their bodies into a stall. Then Alden comes in, he checks the bodies, and he finds a brick of cocaine on the bodies after O'Shea Jackson moved the bodies? What sense does that make? Shouldn't O'Shea Jackson Jr. find it? Ray Liotta's in this movie, not very much. He's in it at the beginning and at the end. You know, he's just one of a million characters in this movie. It felt like a television show because there wasn't really a main character. It was just like a bunch of characters. There's a couple that gets attacked at the start of the movie and you don't see the dude again until like an hour into the film. There's also this park ranger lady who has infinite ammunition in her revolver. She shoots this thing off like 100 times in the movie, and she doesn't have to reload once. Not much else to say about Cocaine Bear aside from that. It's really silly. This movie didn't really have suspense or tension. It kind of felt like a B movie or like an homage to 80s films at times, but tonally it's so off. Most of the time it's just kind of dumb. Overall, the film's tone was kind of unclear, and the execution of certain scenes fall flat. Despite its flaws, I think some people will see this movie and enjoy it just on the concept alone, but for me, it didn't really do much. Next, I'm going to talk about the film Skinamarink, which is an avant-garde original horror film about two young children who are trapped in their house at night by a mysterious presence. It's one of those films that not everyone is going to like. Some people will find it slow and confusing. Some people will not find it scary. They'll find it more frustrating. But as for me, I really enjoyed this movie. If I'm watching a movie that has shown me something that I have never seen before, I give it a lot of respect. And say whatever you want about Skinamarink, yeah, it could be kind of frustrating at times. Maybe it would have worked better as a shorter film. I really respected what this movie was doing because it was unlike anything else I've seen before. And look, I'm not saying Skinamarink is the first analog horror or avant-garde horror film to ever exist, but it is one of the most recent examples I can think of a popular horror movie being this avant-garde and actually connecting with people in the way it has. I can't think of a movie this weird that has gotten a theatrical release like this in a long time. Interesting atmosphere that kind of reminded me of being a kid again, like when I was alone at night, like walking around my house. Like, it just reminded me of that feeling and that kind of creepiness. And man, this movie has some really good scares, like really effective scares and really good imagery. I loved like the last half hour of this movie. This kind of movie can be kind of frustrating if there's like no payoff to all this buildup, but I felt there was a payoff to the buildup in this. Yeah, like the first hour is kind of weird. It's like a lot of just kids whispering and like shots of houses, and it's really kind of like building this atmosphere. But once it gets into the last like half hour, it gets out there with the really experimental weird imagery, and the movie just goes fucking crazy. I just loved the last half hour and just how weird this movie got. It's great proof that you don't need a really high budget or super fancy special effects or like A-list actors to make a really interesting and gripping movie. I feel this director could make something super creepy and experimental if given just a little more resources. That being said, I like that this was a low budget movie. I like the small scale of it. It felt very kind of like a movie that anyone could make, and that's a quality I like too. I don't like movies that are just like, you know, big budget, they throw a bunch of money at them and you can tell there's no like passion or creativity behind it. This movie really felt like there was passion behind it, and like this guy really wanted to tell this story and evoke these emotions out of you, and I thought it was pretty effective. So yeah, I'd highly recommend Skinamarink. I really enjoyed it. So thanks for watching that movie roundup. I guess I will see you guys next time. Bye bye everybody. See you later.